Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on the B&H event space. Today, we are embarking on a journey to become more like Nat Geo photographers. I think that has always been the gold standard of photography. And for that, I would like to welcome our guests for this series, Dotan Saguy and Gail Fisher. How's it going, guys?
Good. Thank you, Derek, for having us. I've been there a few times, and it's always a pleasure to come on BNH. And but this is the first time with Gail, and so we'll talk all about our both our backgrounds, and we've got some great content for you today about travel shoots and how to make them better and how to shoot them more like a Nat Geo professional. So without
Awesome.
further ado. Let's get into it. Some of you who've listened to my talks before here know me more as a street photographer, not a travel photographer. But if you look at this image on the screen right now, this came about with a couple of shoots that I did, week-long shoots that I did in Cuba early on, and that really helped me launch my professional career. And those were self-assigned shoots that at the time, nobody knew about my photography or anything. So I felt like, if I'm going to do an assignment, I'm just going to assign it myself. And I'm going to go out to Cuba and shoot it like a Nat Geo photographer would. And so since then, I've done a bit more of that, and Gail has a wealth of experience with that too. And so we both want to share what we know about. Today is going to be about planning these shoots, but we have a whole series that hopefully you'll all listen to as well about the other aspects of actually shooting it and editing it and all that stuff in the some future talks. If you look at the schedule, there's five more, and yeah, so let's get into it and share all we know today about planning those shoots. So first off, let me introduce Gail, and well, Gail will introduce herself. How about that?
Um, yes, hi. My name's Gail Fisher, and for 20 some years, I worked at the LA Times as a staff photojournalist and also a photo editor of special projects. As a photojournalist, I traveled extensively throughout Asia, the Middle East, Eastern Europe, Africa, South and Central America, covering social and geopolitical issues. My forte is in-depth storytelling. Transitioning out of newspapers into magazines, I joined the staff at National Geographic magazine as a senior photo editor, where I worked with some of the most distinguished photographers in the world. I'd like to share some of that insight with you today. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, and I'll be so the I'm a street photographer. Kind of changed career about 12 years ago from being in high tech and wanting to just be a professional photographer for the rest of my career. And the Cuba stuff kind of launched that, so we'll talk more about that. Since I'm on this photography thing, I have come up with three different photo books with Kara Verlag, with my publisher in Germany. The latest book actually came out a few days ago. It's about the dogs of Venice Beach, so I invite you to check that one out. It's called Dogtown. It's out on Amazon now. And I've taught for Leica Academy and others. I'm also an Oberwerth photo bag ambassador. So that's it for me. You can look up my other talks if you want to know more about my background, but for now, we're going to talk about travel photography. And I kind of want to highlight that there's two kinds of photographers I want to talk to today. Hopefully, you listening are one of those two. Probably are. One is someone like I was, 10 years ago or even now, going and on assignments and actually wanted, going to those trips on your own just for photography and just wanting to come back with the best images possible that you can publish and so on, whether that's that was requested by a magazine or it's your own, just like I did in Cuba. You're just sending yourself out there thinking you're going to bring stuff that you can publish. The other type of photographer I want to talk to is also me, because like right now I'm actually on vacation with my family in Paris, but I do want to do some photography on my own. And, so it's also for those of you who go, on travels with your family, with friends, it could be vacations, cultural trips, and so on. But you do want to come back with great pictures. You want to improve your photography there and make it more professional, more like a Nat Geo photographer. And how do you do that in that context of being, traveling with friends and family? So throughout the series, I'll try to speak to both and really have both, situations in mind. So let me go through the agenda real quick right now. First, we're going to talk about finding visual and cultural inspiration for your travel photography in your planning. So how do you prepare for that? How do you prepare an itinerary that makes sense, that will bring you the best potential for photography? That leads into the shot list, because both that visual and cultural research and the itinerary research, you can come up with a shot list that will really help you, once you're on location, find the best opportunities. So the timing of your trip, and so when it's best to go and how long to stay in different places, we'll talk all about that. We'll talk about your gear plan, what to bring. I know a lot of you on B&H really love talking about gear, and this is especially relevant here when you're traveling and you want to optimize what you're bringing and know what to bring for what type of opportunity. And then a few things that you may not be thinking about, like dress code, like how to dress for different locations and why, as well as theme, this is something that Gail and I have been doing for our workshops. We organize those workshops in France right now, and we are about to introduce other locations as well. And choosing a theme, we found, is really like having the students or the participants choose a theme is really helpful to unleash their creativity and really focus them on something that also makes for great storytelling. And then we're going to talk about hiring local fixers or guides to really find the best locations and provide access and other things. We'll talk all about the advantages of doing that. And then finally, we'll finish with photo laws and ethics in different places, and how that might change how you approach your photography in different places, and how you might be how you might be preparing when you're planning for that trip, to figure out the laws and ethics. So let's jump in. And so first, let's talk about the visual and cultural inspiration. This is kind of one of my favorite things to do before embarking on a trip like this. I can spend months basically figuring out, like going through Google Images, online marketing magazine articles, photo essays, and watching documentaries and so on, and also looking at photo books, travel guides, and so on. I feel like when I'm doing that, I'm kind of traveling already, so it's kind of a bonus. I don't even have to be there yet. But when you want to bring out back really great photos, it's really important to immerse yourself into that, because you really want to figure out, what have people shot before and why and where do they go, and what sort of subjects should you be looking for. And all these things will end up, as we'll see, in the shot list. So that's a very important planning step. I spent months of doing that before going to Cuba, and I still, I just love doing it. So I actually spent a lot of time before going to those places. And researching the culture, same thing. Obviously, with Cuba, history and politics, was a big deal. Language, I speak French, but I don't speak Spanish. So that preparing for that was also important. Figuring out the economy, the agriculture, like knowing, what's important. If you know Sebastião Salgado, for example, he's an economist by training, and he's probably the most renowned documentary photographer, and that serves him. His economy training serves him with all his projects. So this is a very important thing to figure out, to really understand a culture. Of course, the food, spirituality. This is actually a photo I knew that this was spiritual, which you wouldn't know that in the street if you haven't researched it. But the dove and the coconut and the flowers, that was all for some kind of a ceremony that they were preparing for a Santeria ceremony. Santeria is a Afro-Caribbean religion that's very much practiced in Cuba. So this is the kind of thing, unless you've studied this before going, you bump into this and you have no idea what you're looking at. And so it was important to actually be able to get those kinds of shots. And then festivals, of course. So in terms of researching the best locations, it's I'll let Gail comment on this, but there's a whole host of research tools nowadays, and these are photos that Gail shot in Burma. Gail, if you want to talk a little bit about this.
Sure. Yes, some of these are all good resources: Reddit, TripAdvisor, YouTube, Instagram, also some local blogs. Dotan, you can go back a few slides, please.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Also,
Oh
some
yeah.
local blogs can be informative, especially if they're written by a photographer. And I found Lonely Planet can also be a good resource. These are a few images from my travels in Burma. I'm always chasing the light, and I try to be at key locations, either at dawn or during the golden hour in the evenings. The photo before,
These are sorry, I'm going too
yeah,
fast. Okay.
slow
Yeah.
down,
Uh,
crazy mouse driver.
yeah.
This
That's it.
photo is from Bagan. It's a historical city from the 9th to 13th century where the remains of 2,200 temples and pagodas survived and are scattered throughout the landscape here. So, of course, being there at the prime time of light is really important. Okay, the next slide. Tourism bureaus. These can be helpful, but remember, these are tourist bureaus and they cater to tours. So most of the places they'll recommend are probably just packed with people unless you ask for interesting places, less traveled, off the beaten path. So when I go to tourist bureaus, I always tell them that's what we're interested in seeing. Okay, you can go to the next slide, please.
Yeah,
Obviously,
so that,
vetting your sources is very important, and they need to be knowledgeable about the area. How long have they lived there? Do they have a true understanding of the culture? I try to get recommendations from friends or reliable sources. And in this case, I wanted to know, when do the fishermen go out? Well, they go out, they're out there by dawn. So I wanted to be there, of course, because light is everything.
excellent. And then yeah,
Yeah, and then
one thing
a good fixer finding great authentic locations. It's even better if they've worked with photographers consistently so that they have a better understanding of finding some of the best perspective and places to shoot from. And in this case, the fixer I worked with, he suggested some of these really high stupas that I shot from, and he realized where the light shone the best and that kind of thing. And that was priceless because me going there for the first time, I hadn't scoped it out, but he had. So it's really important that they understand the landscape, whether it's a city, a town, or a village, or someplace in the wild.
Yep, absolutely. No, and same thing, in Cuba I had a fixer for that trip and that was absolutely priceless. We'll talk more about a fixer and hiring one a little bit later here. So on the itinerary, obviously there's new tools that I didn't have way back and are available now, and I think it's really good to use them because if a location that you might want to visit, you can actually drop a pin nowadays in some of those locations at least. This is me on my iPad, just putting dropping the location in Provence for our workshop and figuring out, is this a town we'd want to shoot in? And this was before going, and I could just, kind of walk the streets just virtually from my iPad and figuring out, okay, is this a location we'd want to visit? Yes, no, and if so, where would we want to go, and so on. So it really gets you a great sense of that. The other type of tools that hasn't been available until very recently is AI. And I actually now have been asking ChatGPT for advice on places to shoot. And I can show you just a quick
I'm planning a trip to
demo of that.
Paris and I'd like to do some photography. It'll be street and travel photography, but I'd like to do it off the beaten
Oh,
path in
I don't know if you're
areas that
here.
really show the local life. Can you help me?
So anyway, I'm not sure if the audio came through, but I mean, it's really, replying. I was asking it for advice in Paris, and it was, and I know Paris well, so I could actually tell whether it was, true or not, whether it actually had great information, and it definitely provided off the beaten path locations that I'd want to visit and shoot at. So it works really well at this point, and I encourage you to use it. And all this research that you're doing about location, your favorite visual inspirations, we were talking about the Google searches and photo books, looking at photo books and so on for visual inspiration, looking at the cultural aspects, looking at the must-shoot locations that you might bump into, and all these things really are great to come up with a shot list. And a shot list is just a bullet point list that you might keep on your phone or a piece of paper that are just a reminder of all the types of situations you might want to shoot. If you saw, a great photo in a photo book about, fishermen's at dawn, or if you saw, if you're a fixer or somebody you talked to said you absolutely have to go see the temples and you have to go, right before sunset, or those kinds of things, those things should all end up in your shot list so that once you're on location, you have a clear, bullet point list of all the things you need to hit. Because it can be overwhelming once you get there. You don't know where to start and so on. To having that list is really key for me anyway. And Gail has more of a storyboard way of doing it. So each person has their own their own technique for this. But
Yeah.
go yeah.
Yeah, so the way that I approach it, I start doing this as I research my trip. I have a working theme, a focus, places I want to visit, and stories that I want to tell. A notes app is always helpful to jot down your ideas. A very, very important image is your wide scene for a sense of place. You have to set the stage by searching for high perspectives, such as high buildings or high hillsides. You can capture this sense of place, which is extremely important. And this is usually how you set the stage for your story. Just like in a film, you'll see at the beginning of a film, they're setting the stage. You need to do this as well with your stories. Well, this was a monastery in Mandalay. The both of these pictures are actually from Mandalay, but this was a monastery in Mandalay. And in the frame before, I wanted to capture this sense of place, but I also wanted to take it to the next level. So you could see there's a moment within that frame. These are mid-range shots for context. And these are usually captured at medium distance. And this dialogue shot often has multiple subjects within the frame. And this is one of the most common shots in filmmaking as well. They're important images to give your photo essay or story context. And this was inside the monastery. On the first slide, you saw the monastery on the outside. And portraits to connect. Creative, artistic work that captures the subject's personality and depicts their lives. There's different kind of portraits. One is confrontational, where the subject is looking into the lens of the camera. And another kind of portrait is environmental, and this includes a sense of place within the frame, like this portrait here. And then there's also detail shots that are important. And detail shots can be close-up photos that focus on specific parts or elements of the subject, sometimes highlighting details and textures. But in this case, it captures the subject matter in a monastery and it gives the viewer important information.
Yeah, so I mean, all these things, can be part of your shot list, and it helps you, when you're planning, because we're still talking about the planning stage. You're planning your trip. You already have ideas for, those kinds of situations you want to get, and so anyway, having that as a list is really helpful. So the timing, when we do our workshops, Gail and I, we tend to go either early or late in the season. And the reason is we don't want to end up with a whole bunch of tourists and having the tourists and all the shots and everything. So we really want those places looking authentic and have them to ourselves. So we avoid the heart of the tourist seasons, and that typically involves some trade-offs because tourists are there for a reason, not just because it's the kids' vacations, but typically that's when the ideal situations are around flowering. Like here in Provence, all the fields are full of lavender, and it's this like purple, iconic purple field that you see in photos and so on. So but in order to get those flowering fields, you need to go in the heart of the tourist season, which is like July, August, and suffer through 100-degree temperatures, lots of tourists. You can't get anywhere. All the roads are full of cars and so on. So we decide to go off season so that we don't have to deal with that. You can still capture some lavender, as you can see in this photo, just not in the fields. So there are trade-offs, but we find it very much worth it to go on the edge of the season. Also, in terms of timing, it's a matter of how long you stay in each place. I know, I grew up in Europe, but I know in America, when people come to Europe, the idea is, you might want to go for a week and you see one day in Paris, one day in London, that sort of thing. That's not enough time to really get a sense of the place. So it's really important to plan enough time to stay in each location enough to get familiar. And being able to return to the same spots for better light, or let's say you knew that there was a dance somewhere but it only happens on a certain time or whatever, so you might bump into it, you might talk to somebody and they say, yeah, come back on Thursday, that's when we have the dance. And so just staying longer allows you to gives you the flexibility to capture these things that you don't necessarily run into the first time around. And then it's great to just be able to walk a lot and just get lost and make friends and just kind of have serendipity sort of help you. But that, again, only happens if you give it enough time. So these photos were all from a Romania workshop that I did for Leica. And the original itinerary was actually very touristy and very much like one day here, one day there, and that sort of thing. And I changed it so that we could really have time to kind of sink deeper into those areas and spend more time with the locals and really engage with the culture. Now we're going to talk about gear, which I know is a big topic here. And I know the temptation, lots of people have lots of gear and they love their gear, and the temptation is to bring everything just in case you need it. That 400 2.8 or 3.5, as well as the super wide and everything in between, and then maybe a second camera and maybe let's bring the Leica as well, and those and that. And the truth is, if you have a shot list, you sort of know what shots you want to get. Just you can curate your gear to fit those shots and make sure you've got everything covered in terms of the shots you want to get, but not bring too much extra where it becomes there's a bunch of trade-offs to bringing everything. So first, theft can be a thing. The more stuff you bring, the more you attract attention to yourself, and the more you risk getting it stolen and getting more of it stolen. Then it can be creatively paralyzing. If you have too much stuff, and we see this sometimes in our workshops, I try to dissuade people from bringing too much stuff, but some people still want to bring all the gear they have just in case. And when they have it on them, first of all, it's physically paralyzing because then they can't move around too much. But on top of that, something happens. There's a situation that goes very fast, and they're not sure. They're still deciding whether to use the Leica on their shoulder or the Nikon that's in the bag, and then what lens to put on it. And by the time that they've decided, the situation has gone away. So it really helps to kind of stick with a plan for your gear. And just bring what you're going to use, and then it's tiring to carry a lot of gear. So it's important to bring, but whatever you bring, it's important to bring a camera that you know well. Um, you don't want to bring a camera that you're not familiar with yet, because this is the kind of photo you might get. If your settings aren't exactly what you needed. And then it's important to go on a few photo shoots before you go on your trip to refresh your memory about the equipment and test that it still works perfectly. And then to dial all the settings that you need before the trip to make sure you've got everything working the way you want. There are some great tutorials out there, for people who just want to go through the whole menu system and just know everything so that they really know their camera. That's a great thing to, sometimes for 20 bucks, 30 bucks, you can buy like a video tutorial and just, spend a couple hours doing it. So that pays off. I like thinking about how I will use the gear by type of shoot. So like I might think, for street. This was in Oaxaca, Mexico. For the street, I want to be unobtrusive, something unobtrusive. I want to bring something discreet, probably short to mid range. So I have like, a camera and a lens that will fulfill that purpose. Maybe I bring an extra prime or something, but I have a bag that will fit that, and off I go. If it's a day where I'm going to shoot more low light, I have sort of a different setup for that. If it's landscape, it's yet maybe another setup. But the point is to have sort of a carrying strategy. I usually bring more than one photo bag with me because I want to be able to downsize and upsize based on what I need that day. And so, I don't, the photo bag where I bring all the gear is not the photo bag that I use to walk around. I just pick and choose what I need for the day. I put it in the smallest bag that will carry that gear, and off I go. So that's something when you're planning your trip. It's also good to plan in terms of what sets of gear will go together and what bag they might fit into, and how to make that practical, day to day. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah,
thinking
go
about,
ahead, Gail.
yeah, you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so you have to understand your landscape. What are you gonna need to capture the kind of images to tell your story? Well, in this case, I was in Alaska and I wanted to do time exposures of the Northern Lights. So I did need a tripod. And then the size tripod depends on how heavy is the camera you're shooting with, how heavy is the lens. You need to have something stable enough to be able to hold that amount of equipment. Now, do I carry a tripod on most trips that I go on? No, I don't. And if I really think I might need a tripod, I'll carry uh, a smaller tripod, and they have so many lighter travel tripods available. You can go to the next slide. And what about that big telephoto lens? Well, it's I'm a photojournalist, so I grew up shooting with a fixed lens, and I shot with fixed lenses for several years, and my bag was so heavy because I had so many different sizes. But finally, when they came out with zoom lenses and the quality was as good as a fixed lens, I started shooting with zoom lenses. And my standard three zoom lenses I shoot with is a 24 to 70, an 80 to 200, and then a 1 to 400. And with these three lenses, I can shoot anything from, what if I'm in a city, I'm pretty much running around with my wide angle, and that's it, the 22 to 70. But if I'm out shooting wildlife like this, I'll want to take the 1 to 400. So again, it's where you're going to be and what kind of lens you use. But I agree with Dotan. You don't want to be fumbling with a lot of different lenses when you're out shooting. And what if I am shooting with two lenses like I am here when I'm doing landscape and then wildlife, I actually will shoot with two bodies. So I'm not taking the lenses off and on and missing shots.
Excellent. Yeah, it's really, and especially for those heavy things like a big tripod or a big, those are the big decisions because, if you bring them, it's going to be heavy and so on. So you really think, do I need them? You go on safari, absolutely. If not, or on the situations where you need them, absolutely. If not, then leave them home. Um, of laptop or tablet. So of course, there's a whole bunch of things that you also need to bring on those trips. Sometimes people actually don't bring a laptop or a tablet because they feel like, hey, I can just look at the photos on the back of the phone, of the camera, or I can look at them on the maybe upload them to my phone and look at them there. I find that it's really helpful to at least bring a tablet, like an iPad or something, to review your photos after each shoot because there might be a technical problem where things are not quite in focus or there you might be it's good to review to know what you're missing and what you might want to come back to, and so editing each day at least quickly to know what you got and what you might be missing or what might be going wrong is really helpful. And other, obviously external hard drive for backing up. That's very good practice. Multiple batteries, multiple SD cards, because they can get corrupted. I actually did on several shoots. I would bring a card for each day. I would have a whole pocket of cards numbered by the day, and each day I would pop the card of that day, shoot the card, put it back in my bag, and then get the next card so that I wouldn't have basically I'd have backups of everything, and I'd also upload everything to the external drive, so I'd have a couple of different backups of the same thing. That was very helpful. SD cards nowadays don't cost very much, especially the smaller ones. The less, ones with less memory, which if you're only shooting it for one day, that's totally fine. Cables, chargers, international adapters, that goes without saying. And then maybe a backup camera. So, because you never know. Well, one might break, might get stolen, might malfunction, something might go wrong. What do you do then? You've traveled all the way there. Sometimes I just use my iPhone as a backup. If it's not, super important, it's more like personal work or whatever, and I'm okay with just my iPhone as backup. If I'm going to bring a backup camera, though, that actual camera, I try to choose something that's either compatible with the first camera, so I don't have to bring a whole nother set of lenses. Make sure it's the same system and it works flawlessly with all the same lenses. The other option is to just bring a standalone, camera, more like a point and shoot or a rangefinder or something that has an integrated lens that will travel easily and be a good backup and be high resolution enough for what you want. Let's talk about dress code. That's kind of an unusual one. We just went to France with a few students of ours in April, and one of the things was, in France, especially in Paris, people dress differently, and if you don't look the same, if you don't dress like them, you look like a tourist. And as as a photographer, it's actually problematic. Like you may not be able to approach people the same way. They might not view you the same way. So to the extent you can pass as a local, why not? And so researching that before your trip and figuring out how people dress there, or asking someone who lived there, that's super helpful. In France, for example, we told our participants, our workshop participants, avoid the tourist giveaways, which in France are if you dress with sports gear, anything athletic, you're going to it's to do sports. You never wear athletic wear if you're just walking down the street. So things like athletic shorts, athletic t-shirts, sneakers, maybe that actually is starting to change a little bit, but you don't want to dress like this family, or you're going to be obvious tourist, especially with your camera around your neck. And thankfully, there's actually small accessories that are very easy to travel with, like a scarf. Like I'm not talking about like a winter scarf, but more like either silk or cotton scarf. Men wear that a lot in France, and when you wear that as a man in France, it signals that you're from there, that you're you're French. And so some of our students actually wore. At first, they were like kind of laughing, like I would never dress like this. But then they tried wearing it, and then they wore it the rest of the time because they were totally passing as French with their scarf. So it totally does the trick, and it's not a hard, not that it would work everywhere. Each destination is different, but it definitely worked there. A theme is something many people may not be thinking about, but we actually have started doing that in our workshops, and it's amazing how much better results people get because it really unleashes their creativity. And what I mean by that is picking a theme that feels personal to you and also feels like it's a good fit for the destination that you're going to. So like this was in Paris, and we told them, pick one of those themes or come up with your own. This is, Paris in Motion was a popular one. Some people did something about color in Paris. Romantic Paris was another choice, and it really helped them because going to a new destination can be quite um, uh, overwhelming. You get there and you're not quite sure what to take photos of because there's so many things that look compelling, but you're not sure how to capture them and so on. So having that focus really hones you into something that feels personal to you and really will make your photos more of a cohesive whole. So in this case, this is a photo taken by Jerry Caruso, who was one of our workshop participants in Paris, and he's a biker. He's an avid biker. He loves biking, so he could really relate to having seen so many bikes in Paris, and he did his whole photo essay on bikes. This is somebody else, Fran Meckler, who's also at this workshop. She chose Paris in Motion, and she did a fantastic series with using motion and slowing the shutter speed and using techniques to really show motion. This was from Andrew Martin, who chose Abstract Paris, and that really guided him throughout the whole trip, and he had a great series of abstract shots like this one. And this was from Aaron Bunda, who chose Romantic Paris, and he did his own, interpretation of Romantic Paris with in black and white, and with you can see a sense of place here with the silhouette, and that was very successful as well. So it makes it personal, it makes it more creative, and it will help you focus. So I highly recommend that if you go somewhere and you really want to come back with a story, that you choose a theme that makes sense for you and kind of try and stick with that theme. Yeah, and for storytelling, obviously, all your photos will have a common thread that will help tell the story. Frankly, the book that I just released about dogs of Venice Beach was kind of like that. It really helped me to focus on just dogs in Venice Beach, which has lots of other interesting things. So it doesn't matter where you're going, even if it's in your own town. I think choosing a theme is actually a great idea, a great way to go for any kind of trip or photo shoot. We've talked about the local fixer or guide, and let me give you a little bit more info on that. Obvious thing is they find you all the off the beaten path spots that you could never find on your own if if they're legit, if they really know the place and they know the people there. They provide access, which was, for me, invaluable in Cuba. I don't speak Spanish, so they really helped with that. And to connect with locals and really have meaningful interactions and finding all the information you need also there to take better photos. They can help with the planning, more to the point of this presentation. They can be invaluable in helping with your planning. They can avoid locations that you really don't want to visit, either because they're dangerous or they're full of tourists or they're just not visually interesting. But you have to find somebody who really knows photography, and that's kind of the challenge. Lots of guides that you can find on TripAdvisor and so on are great for tourists, but they may not be great for photographers. So it's really important to vet who you're looking at as a potential fixer for your trip.
So Dotan, I can
Yeah.
talk to these
Yeah,
slides.
jump in,
Can
please.
you go
Yeah.
back, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's so easy now to do your research. You
Sorry.
can go back. It's so
Yeah,
easy
no, it's
now to do research because of online. And one find that I use, it's Go Ask a Local, and this service is a great resource for travel experts all over the world. And as an independent traveler, I make my own bookings, and while I'm in a country, I travel like a local. We rent cars, we take the local transportation, et cetera, et cetera. But I found that Go Ask a Local is a great service. There's a fee to it. It's usually about $100 an hour, but then they follow up with detailed notes. And a lot of times through this is where I'm finding fixers in the area. They'll give me a list of fixers and then I can call them directly. These are a series of photos from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, and I wanted to experience Carnival. So timing on your travel is critical, especially in this case. Make sure you have real connections in the area. In this case, this was a favela in Rio, and I knew I wanted to go there, but I also wanted a guide. And so I talked to the concierge at the hotel and I said, I want somebody that actually lives in the barrio. Do you have anybody you can recommend? And they recommended somebody. He was amazing. He knew all these people and it was a great experience. So, having a guide or a fixer in this kind of situation, it it's very important.
And those I mean, this area can, if you go on your own, this is, especially with equipment, this can be really dangerous also. So it's really important to have somebody with you who knows the people there and can
Right. They can watch,
shepherd you through it.
right. They can watch your
Absolutely.
back, etc. Yeah, and interview a few. Um, Interviewing a few is very important. And I usually try to do this on the phone before I leave for a trip, because then I can understand, okay, do they know the language that I speak? Will I be able to understand them? Because it doesn't help if you can't understand someone, when they're taking you around. So check your experience. And better yet, have they worked with photographers? Because if they have, that is also very helpful because they understand perspectives and light and when you might need to go there. Also, check their references. Are these people reliable? Are they knowledgeable? Are they well traveled? Will they work the kind of hours you want to work? I work, a lot of times I'll start at dawn and not finish until dusk or after dusk. So are these people flexible with their times that they'll work with you? And also,
Absolutely.
you need to agree on a price beforehand. So really do your research and make sure you know what the going price is in that part of the world. And yeah, discuss this before you set out with them.
Yeah, if I can insist on one point is, you'll find a lot of these fixers guides will say, yeah, 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 I know all these areas. I've grown up there. I know everyone. But some of them, and they're not lying. They know the place well. They just don't know what a photographer, professional photographer looks for. And they'll bring you to tourist places and they'll show you all these ruins, that historical place, this and that. They have no idea how, if it has visual appeal, if it will make for good photos or not. They're thinking in terms of tourist photos. So it's really important to find a fixer that has worked with professional photographers, and to ask them for references from professional photographers. If they say they've worked with, New York Times or CNN or whatever, ask them, okay, great. Who did you work with? Which photographer? Is it possible to contact them by email and ask them a few questions? Really, I can't tell you the amount of times that people say, oh, yeah, 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 I work with photographers all the time. What they mean is they work with tourists who take photos and then they just don't know where to take actual, photographers. So that's kind of a pro tip that I can't insist enough on. Okay, so finally, the laws and ethics, they can actually be quite different depending on location. If you're used to shooting in the US, and I've talked a lot about this on my street photography lectures, but in the US, we're spoiled. The law is very much in favor of photographers. Anything you take in the street, you can publish. There's no issues with that. You just can't use it commercially, but you can publish in book, you can publish in a magazine. There's no issues with that. In other places, it's not necessarily the case. So we were in France again for this workshop, and there's a lot more privacy constraints. The law in France is is much more. It was originally anti-paparazzi, but it really affects other, any photographer at this point. And you basically cannot, in France specifically, you cannot photograph someone who's recognizable and publish their photo without asking them for permission, and ideally getting a release from them. So if you came back with photos, you wanted to publish them in a magazine or a book, you'd be stuck if you didn't have the publisher probably wouldn't publish them unless you had the proper releases. So it's good to know that ahead of time, because you'll know better. First of all, you'll come with releases if you need them, and then if you don't want to use releases, then you will shoot things in a different way. I mean, was a case where I wanted to get a photo of this guy, but I wanted to make him unrecognizable, so I didn't have to ask for a release. So, I slowed the shutter. It also, artistically it works better, but it has that double purpose of also not, being more private. And it will affect how you shoot, and you might decide to, also the reaction that locals might have to your camera you might get different gear, you might, dress differently. There's lots of things that it might change if you know what the local ethics and local laws are for photography. Whether you need to ask for permission when you're talking to people. And then again, this is another way of avoiding recognizable faces. We actually did a whole lecture when we were in Paris with our students. We had a whole portion of a lecture on, here's like 5 or 6 or maybe more different ways and techniques that you can use to take the same photo, but without making people recognizable and making it more artistic. So we teach that, and it's in some locations it's very helpful. So that's it as far as the part of the presentation about planning your travel photography. But we've got some photography planned for you, and Gail and I have put together storyteller workshops, which you've seen on all these slides, and it's a great way of doing all these things that we've talked about, but without having to do all the work yourself. We can help you with all of it, and we do a lot of the we do obviously the whole itinerary part, and we teach you how to make better travel photos in the field. You get a lot of personal attention. There's only 10 participants in each of our workshops, and we're 2 instructors with very complementary backgrounds. And it's done. Everything is all inclusive. So you're staying at really nice hotels. You're in full cultural immersion, where we can connect you with, give you access. We're only going to locations where we have amazing access and we know the location really well. So we are your fixers essentially as well when we're there. I also, in Paris or in Provence, I'll take you to all my favorite restaurants. I know the places really well. I grew up in Paris, and I grew up going on vacation in Provence. So I know a lot of the places well, and I know where the good food is. And one of the things we do in every one of our workshops now too, is we have students make their own photo book of their best shots from the workshop. So the last day we take you through a whole process of, especially with Gail's background, this is phenomenal. It's actually people's favorite part, I think, of many trips is editing, sequencing, processing your photos, laying them out in the book, and that's basically ready to print. And so that's people come out, of the workshop with this physical thing, and it's a great feeling. And then you get published also. We have connections where you can get published online in a very famous photography blog. And if you have a good photo story, it will get published there. So we actually have a trip that to offer you. Our next trip is to Provence in the south of France. And it will be totally off the beaten path. It's October 27th through November 4th coming up. And we still have a few spots available for that. So please contact us if you're interested. And we're basically time traveling. This is not just travel. This is time travel. There's all those beautiful medieval villages. It's completely surreal once you start walking in those. You really feel like you've gone back in time. and time has slowed down. And of course, we're, it's all inclusive. So we've got a curated set of restaurants. And we even finished this. This is optional, but some people have opted to can follow us after because it ends on November 4th. On the 6th, the 5th or the 6th, there's the beginning of Paris Photo, which is the biggest, most prestigious photo fair in the world. And we've got some VIP passes to take you there, and we can show you around. And it's a fabulous way of ending the workshop if you choose to. Again, this is optional. And yeah, so that's basically get in touch, don't be a stranger. And, you can check us out at storyteller-workshops.com. And all our workshops are listed there with prices and everything. And then you can email us any questions you have at storytellerworkshops@gmail.com. There's no dash in this one, but there's still an S at workshops. So that's about it. Back to you, Derek.
Dotan, Gail, thank you guys so much. This is an unsolicited comment I'm about to say, but people don't invest enough in themselves as photographers. And I think this is something that's important. We talk about mentorship all the time, but it can't be understated. Learning from experienced people can't be understated at all. I mean, a lot of what you guys probably don't even think of it when you're not, when you're going about in your daily lives or going about in your travels, you're not thinking all this stuff. You're just doing it. It has gotten to a point where it's second nature. And I think that's the thing that people don't think about is that you want to get to a point where it's second nature, where you're not thinking about all the thousands of things that you've experienced throughout the years. They just happen. And so I do implore people to, yes, these are great opportunities that you have people who, I mean, I can't think of a more experienced duo that has graced our platform in recent memory that is you guys are out there doing it. So definitely check out those links. Reach out to Dotan, Gail, if you guys do have any additional questions. A lot of great information there. I want to know, what is the one thing, if you could pull something out of the past hour that is probably the most underestimated thing that people, there's always something. It's like when you go on a trip and there's the one thing that everybody always forgets or doesn't think about. What's the one thing, if you could pull one tip out of there or one piece of information that guys have seen over the years that people either underestimate or don't really put the level of importance on it that you think they should?
Um, I mean, I would say getting in touch with people who live there, and whether that's somebody who spent time there, or a fixer, finding somebody reliable there who can really give you some insider information about locations, times, how much time to stay in each location, that what to see, what to, and somebody who's photography conscious, who's very much like has an eye for photography, not just somebody who's led tourists there. I think that probably is the most important part of all this. Because otherwise you get there, you have what, like a week, 10 days maybe or something. You're not going to know, you're going to waste a lot of time trying to figure things out, and you're going to ask the wrong people. You're going to ask, hotels. They're going to give you tourist tips. It's really, really important to research this stuff in advance. And I think if you have the ability to get in touch with somebody who really knows the location as a local, it's absolutely crucial to do that, because you will come back with such better work, regardless of your level of photography. You're going to come back with much better work if you have that insight.
Yeah, for me, it's not only the research you do beforehand, because you want to figure out your budget. How long do you need to be there? Are you going to go to Brazil and spend 3 weeks or 4 weeks? Are you going to go to the Amazon while you're there? So you want to know your budget. You want to know the time. Yeah, that's really important. So the research to me is the most important thing. And then you also want to figure out your story, and you want to have it, you want to start your shot list. So that preparation before you leave, for me, if I haven't done that, I'd be lost. So I put a lot of work into before I travel. And then when I get there, I'm prepared. I've brought the right equipment that I need. and I'm spending the amount of time that I need in each place. And I keep it flexible too. If I need to change gears, I can once I'm there. But yeah, I tend to allow more time now when I travel, um, 3, 4 weeks if I'm going to travel to a foreign country, because I want to know all about the politics and the culture. And you can't just do that if you're just running from place to place to place. So I try to stay, like when I went to Rio, we were there nearly a week, and then we went to the Amazon for a week, 10 days. So that kind of time investment is very important as well. Thank you.
Great, no, great information. I can't wait to get to the rest of this series. I kind of just want to rush it. I want to get to it. I'm like, let's just get it all done. No, it's a lot of good information. I want to thank you guys again for gracing our platform with the information, the knowledge, the experience that you guys bring to the table. And to those of you out there watching, there is plenty more to come. What is it about? What are we, 4, 5, 6 parts on this?
We have 5 more. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're
Yeah,
gonna go through. I think the next one is gonna be, actually, you don't miss that one. It's about actually shooting it on location. What do you need to execute your shoot? What are the keys to that? So we're gonna be talking about that. The next one after that, I think we're gonna talk about composition, how to compose like a professional on assignment, and we're going to talk about editing and sequencing. We're going to talk. I mean, there's lots of good stuff coming up. So keep an eye out for those presentations. You definitely you don't want to miss any in the series for sure.
definitely. Look, you guys are all out there in great hands. Like I said, there's a lot of information out there on the internet, but it's not always good information. So we trim through the fat for you, bring the best to this platform. So I want to thank two of the best out there, Gail and Dotan, for joining us. Plenty more to come from this series and plenty more to come from us. Just head over to our YouTube where you can find this and all of our other live and pre-recorded content on the B&H event space. That's all we have for you for right now, though. A huge thank you to Dotan and Gail once again. Another edition of the B&H virtual event space now in the books. Catch y'all next time.